Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to ETH Talk, your weekly look at the market in ETH Online. And if you want to know more about what's coming in the development of ETH Online itself, I would highly recommend you take a look at the updates website, because CCP added several pages with lots of information on cool stuff that's coming, like a 64-bit client, skins for structures, and late August we will also get a BIS specific event where you can earn some incredible skins for the Triglavian ships. So looking pretty good. I also have other stuff to do, so I will try my best to play as much ETH Online as possible. But definitely great news to see all of those updates finally up on the website. We are here for the market, of course, so let's jump into it. As always, we are going to get started with some plex and stuff. It's going to be at 1 minute. Like that. And let's start with plex themselves. You can probably already tell that they are slowly going up. In fact, in like the 10 minutes it took me to get ready, plex in Jita itself went from 2,750,000 to practically 2,800,000 ISK. You can clearly see the bottom forming here on the chart as well for the 5-day moving average, and the daily average is starting to go back up. So we had a nice little opportunity, and we still have a nice opportunity to buy plex for less than 2.8 million ISK, which, you know, if you look at this entire 1-year chart, is definitely not a bad price. We are at that 1-year low point. If you go outside of Jita, we are at that 2,750,000 pretty much, and the buyers are just below 2.7 million. So we are still talking pretty cheap plex, but it is looking like the market wants to go back up at this point. The multiple pilot training certificate is continuing to go down though, trying to reach a second bottom. We managed to break 880 million in April when there was a massive sale happening. You can still see the volumes going up, driving the prices back down, and we are now selling them for 945 million ISK. Buyers coming in at 880 million. If you could still grab a couple for less than 900 million ISK, I do think you are making a very good purchase at that point. For the skill extractors, we are continuing to go for bottom prices here as well. That same bottom forming, just like plex, is showing up as well though. So we had a very low point of very close to 300 million ISK, currently selling for 310 million ISK. Buyers are coming in at 306. So here we do see that margin already closing quite rapidly, and that is generally a sign that the bottom is being reached and that the upper pressure is starting to take over from the increased volumes and usually the sales from CCP, of course. Next up, for the injectors, let's start with the large scale injector. That's very strange, quite unusual. Second leg down, not what I expected. We reached 750 million ISK, which was pretty much a 1-year low point, but now we have a second leg down to less than 730. Sellers are coming in at 719 million ISK. Buyers are coming in at 700 million ISK. This is quite a lot cheaper all of a sudden. This does feel like it's not just the plex sales that are doing this, and something else is adding to this downfall of the large scale injectors, this massive decrease in price. This is now very clearly a 1-year low point. This is a complete break from the trend of the large scale injectors that have remained extremely strong throughout most of the year, while plex have actually slowly been going down throughout all of that period. The large scale injectors have managed to maintain a price of around 800 million ISK for quite a little bit, but now in about 2 months time and on 2 massive moves down, we are cutting that price down to 720 million ISK for the sellers now and 700 million for the buyers. Much more affordable, losing about 1/8 of its price. And is this an opportunity? Well, I would say, as I always say during ETH Talk, if you're looking at investment opportunities, never put all your eggs in a single basket. Don't go crazy and now invest all your ISK in large scale injectors. But if you want, and if you, for instance, bought a couple at 750, you could consider buying a couple more now at 700 million ISK, just to try and lower your averages. If you ever get back to 800 million, you're making that much more profit. Next up, we have the small scale injectors that are also breaking through the 150 million ISK mark and are at a 1-year low point. Quite a surprising drawback. If anyone has a theory on what's happening for the skill injectors? I would love to see that in the comments. I myself don't really have an idea. I mean, the plex pressure basically breaking through at some point is probably a part of this, right? During this January to May period, we actually saw plex go down and the injectors stay very strong, and this might in part be a correction for that, but I don't think it explains especially the second leg down. This is very strange. So the small skill injectors selling for 148 million ISK and buyers coming in at 140, again a 1-year low point. This is definitely something that's quite unusual, considering that the daily alpha injectors are back on their normal price ranges, and that this should still show some demand, at least for skill points, selling for 59.4 million ISK, buyers coming in at 53.5. The daily alpha injectors show that, especially for alpha clones, or at least for alpha clones, there is normal demand for skill points, but the skill injectors are definitely at a low point at this point. And yeah, for the plex stuff category here, this is very unusual. We usually have the general inflation trend that means more and more ISK flows into these items, but now, especially here since December, we can clearly see that following plex, there is a lot of ISK that is actually flowing out of this market, away from plex, away from the extractors, and away from the injectors now in the last 2 months or so. This is a lot of ISK that flows out of this market and into others, generally speaking. There's also, of course, we know from the monthly reports that there has actually been a lot of ISK taken out of the game, presumably bans from bots. That could be part of this as well. But overall, you definitely get a feeling that it's not an inflationary spiral at the moment. There's sales, but there is this general downtrend in prices for plex related items. Next up, we're moving on to some minerals at 710. Like that, and you may already have seen from the ticker below, but titanium is continuing its ascent, and 7 ISK is now starting to come into view. This is definitely one of the items where at the moment, at least in the last, let's say, month or so, ISK is starting to flow into. Of course, this is highly related to the war, but yeah, titanium in Jita selling for 697, so practically 7 ISK. Buyers are coming in at 673. This is an incredible recovery for titanium. Now, people are probably coming out of the woodwork to sell their titanium. I did so during last week as well. 1.6 billion, 2 billion, 2 billion, 2 billion. You know, the numbers are starting to increase here on the supply side. But this is a very, very nice recovery from 5 to 7 ISK in about a month. And 7 ISK, even before all of the mining changes, was a high price for titanium, a great price to try and sell your titanium. That's something that we didn't see that often, and that has definitely not been sustained for too long throughout my playing of EVE Online. So at the moment, for high-sec miners, this is great news. You could even risk yourself on some Veldspar if you don't have any good alternatives in your system at the moment. You're getting 7 ISK now for something that usually will get you 5 ISK, and that has actually been lower as well here, 4.5 ISK, when the moon mining changes actually started to happen and even more general mining supplies came online. So great comeback here. Let's see if pyrite is doing anything. Still hesitating. This is a bit surprising to see titanium up this much and to not see the other minerals show the same pattern. So titanium is still moving between 4 and 4.5 ISK here. 410 for a first seller, usually 424, 425 for most of them. Again, 1.5 billion, 1.8 billion here. All of this is for 426 and 425. It's a lot of pyrite to absorb, and at the moment we're basically still supplying way more than the market needs. As a result, that price is staying in its current range. One that could be interesting is Mexlon, and finally a little bit of a breakout. It's after a decrease in price and a bottom at 65 ISK, we have a first leg to 70. During the increase for titanium, we were not moving. Now finally we do have a jump up to almost 75 ISK. So it's 74 for the sellers, 71 for the buyers. This is an okay price, maybe a touch above average, but nothing too crazy, especially compared to the titanium spike. Still, it's good news. That does mean that you now have 2 minerals to mine for in HiSec. You can mine some titanium, you can mine some Exelon as well, and you can get some decent ISK per hour out of that. Way better than pyrite and way better than isogen. That is still extremely flat despite a massive volume spike right here. I would assume someone did make an investment at lower prices, but isogen is still selling for 27.5 ISK, 27.7 for the second seller, and then 26.78 for the first buyer. Way oversupplied at the moment. This is not going anywhere. And now we've got Noxium that is recovering nicely, went up to 300 ISK, is now jumping up to 350 ISK. Pretty good, 350 for the sellers, 335 for the buyers. So that is a nice little movement as well. And if you really want to get rid of your Noxium, which I might want to do at this point, you can definitely consider selling at this point. You can see that we managed to defend 300 ISK for quite a while, but seeing that break down to 250 here is very bad news for when the war ends, when the extra minerals are no longer needed. Then you can clearly see now that the potential for Noxium dropping back below 300 ISK is definitely real. So being able to sell for 350 at the moment, I think, is a great price, and I would definitely consider this a sell opportunity for your Noxium stocks. Next up, we have our Zydrine flat with a slight trend up here at the very tail end. That is currently selling for 550 ISK, buyers at 506. And then we have Megasite that is super flat below 625, currently selling for 608 ISK, and the buyers are coming in at 579. For Megasite and Zydrine, big difference of course since moon mining. All of this does seem to have settled down. Basically Megasite around 600 ISK, Zydrine around 550. That is the situation. The big differences are of course that now we have many sources for these minerals coming from HiSec, and that it's no longer just the nullsec exporters that are dictating this price. They can't make up the difference anymore, and a big war that would disrupt massive supplies of these minerals from nullsec no longer has that massive impact on these mineral prices. We had to give back a lot of the price because of that, but we are also going to gain in stability and increasing affordability of the Tech 1 chips because of this. Next up we have Morphite, a lovely spike up to more than 11,000 ISK, so I do hope that you bought some here when you could buy them for less than some Morphite for less than 9,000 ISK. Currently selling for 12,000 ISK, bars at 11,100. This is definitely not bad. Morphite is a different mineral from all the others because it is not tied to the Tech 1 economy, but to the Tech 2 economy, and I do feel that this clearly shows that except for the super capital ships, where apparently titanium, Mexel, Noxium are at the moment winning out for the bottlenecks, it's the Tech 2 meta that is dominating the game and the war in nullsec, and as a result it's Morphite that is profiting from what's happening there. Next up we have our PI at 1320. Like that, and let's take a look. If you already saw what's happening on the updates website, you know that for the winter there is a new set of structures that are planned, but they are smaller structures that are already existing in nullsec, stuff like Sino jammers and things like that. So I cannot tell you for sure that there will be advanced PI materials needed for these structures. It's going to be interesting in the upcoming weeks and months to see how the market speculates on this, and then of course if you want to be ready, then you do want to make at least some purchases for that, and then once that stuff hits CC, we'll know what it takes to produce them, and that is of course when we will have the potential gains or losses if we gamble wrongly on advanced PI materials and the next set of structures from Upwell. So broadcast nodes are currently holding at around an average price on the chart. 2 million, below 2 million would be great. Buyers are at 2 million, sellers at 2,150,000 ISK. So I would say if you do want to be ready and you want to grab some broadcast nodes, have the patience to put up a buy order, put it just above 2 million. I think that's, considering this entire chart, that is not a bad investment. Construction blocks next are also recovering a little bit, holding at 12,000 ISK, right around their average, 12,000 for the sellers, 11,300 for the buyers. Pretty much a normal price range. Consumer electronics are breaking out, currently at a one-year high point, selling for 16,000 ISK. Buyers are coming in at 15,900. That is quite surprising to see that buyers are willing to follow this closely on the consumer electronics. This is a massive increase from 12,500 to 16,000. Is a great time to be selling your consumer electronics, and of course a nice show of the PI market that this one is very much alive. There's lots of trading, lots of stuff, lots of speculation happening around this market, and you do have these nice opportunities that are not always as pronounced, like this one, right, dropping to 11,000 ISK, probably buy orders close to 10,000 ISK. Very pronounced opportunity here. Pretty sharp drop off to less than 12,500, well below average, and then this nice recovery with a great sell opportunity. The coolants are now hesitating, but managing to recover to 11,000 ISK, not bad at all. 11,000 for the sellers, 10,800 for the first buyer. It's 10,200 for most of them, so that is not a complete closing of the gap or upwards pressure. I think we'll settle at this price, basically a recovery of fuel demand and the PI materials related to that. Pretty damn good. Back to a normal average coolant price. I'd say a great time to produce and sell them. Enriched uranium, a little bit of a spike up here on volume increases, up to 13,750 on the chart, back down to 12,900 for the sellers and 11,800 for the buyers. I'd say that this is still a little bit above average, not by too much. Definitely an okay time to sell as well. The integrity response drones, ooh, this is what we have been waiting for. Average price 2.5 million. Look at the chart jumping way down. Average price of 2 million, 2.4 million for the sellers, 2.3 million for the buyers. So that opportunity unfortunately is already over. Yesterday someone must have dumped some integrity response drones or something like that to make this happen, but let's also keep in mind less than 2.3 million for the buyers. If you go look for 2.3 million, let's see if we can actually get that here. It's 2.25 million at the very bottom, so you're just above that. Definitely a nice place to try and grab some integrity response drones from the buy orders. Again, I do think you want to have that patience. The mechanical parts, just like coolants, have recovered and went up to 12,500 ISK, which even historically is going to be above average. 12,200 for the sellers, 12,000 for the buyers, for the first two coming in here, showing strong demand for this fuel-related PI material, well above average. That's for sure a great time to produce and sell them. Very easy to do as well. Barren plans for mechanical parts, gas plans for coolants. Very easy to make, very common to find, and nice to see that recovery. The nuclear reactors, after a very short spike with even a day up to 120,000 ISK, we are back down unfortunately, and I did not take advantage of that sell opportunity, so I'm still holding on to my nuclear reactor reserves. Back down to 95,000 for the sellers, even less than that, and 84,000 for the buyers. Quite a surprise to me that this didn't go any higher, or that it was this volatile, massively up and then down in a day or something like that. So pretty crazy on the nuclear reactor fronts, and we had a tiny window to sell at a nice profit. The organic mortar applicators also showing a little bit of pressure here at the tail end, going down to 1 million ISK on average yesterday. 1 million for the sellers, 1 million for the buyers, almost 1.1 million. So again, you could buy close to 1 million for organic mortar applicators. I would advise to do so if you still want to make investments, considering what's shown on the updates website. But again, don't go too crazy with the amounts, and I would say have the patience to try and grab a good buy order. The robotics next, after reaching a high point as well of 110,000 ISK, has to give back a little bit of ground. Still trading for 107 on the seller side, 100,000 for the first few buyers. Still a respectable price for robotics. Self-harmonizing power core, same trend here, look at that. Average price going below 2 million ISK. That means sellers are at 2 million, buyers are at 1.9 million. I would definitely consider this a nice little opportunity to grab some power cores for less than 2 million ISK. I'd even be willing to put up a buyer at 1.5. Want to buy a couple of them for not too many, right? don't disrupt the market by wanting to buy 4,000 of them at 1.95 million, but you know, just grab 100 of them or something like that. I think that is definitely possible. Self-harmonizing power cores. Also, another advanced PM material down below average and a nice buy opportunity, I think. Superconductors, 12,000, bouncing off of that. Increased volumes all of a sudden. Strange, 13,500 for the sellers, 11,800 for the buyers. Noticeable margin between these two. I would say selling way above average. Well, above average, not way above. And the buyers around average, maybe a touch above that. Test cultures next, definitely going down. And what the hell? Did my game say something? A little bit strange, but alright. So test cultures going down, landing at 7,500 disc. Buyers are at 7,500 disc. I would say that this is also a slight opportunity, and that might just be related to advanced PM materials, considering this spike here in November with the refineries. So that is, in my opinion, another one that, especially if you want to have a lower ISK-wise investment but still want to try to ride that wave, I would look into some test cultures. And then finally, the wetware mainframes, same thing. All right, advanced PM materials across the board on the downtrend, below average, 2.08 million on average couple of days ago, currently selling for 2.2 million and buyers at 2.08 million. So again, buyers can grab these materials at the moment. These average prices clearly show that. So this is a nice time to try and grab some wetware mainframes for less than 2.1 million. And if again we look at this chart, less than 2.1 million is a really good price to buy them at. Interesting week for advanced PM material, definitely on my things to do now. A trip to Jita and some buy orders for these things. Interesting stuff. Next up, we'll move on to the advanced moon materials at 2150. Like that. And as always, we'll start with the carbide related stuff. So here are the crystalline carbonites, pretty flat for the week here at a less than average price, selling for 172. Buyers coming in at 165, pretty low margin as well. If you want to make a move on this, I would say buy from the buy orders. That would be my attempt. The Fernite carbide next, a little bit of a jump up, and even in the last 2 days selling for more than 200 ISK, 203 for the sellers, 194 for the buyers. If you manage to buy here at like around 170, you have a slight sell opportunity in the Fernite carbide. Interesting. Next up, we have number 3, the titanium carbide. After a 1-year low point of 173, also recovered above 200 ISK. Currently selling for 210. Buyers are at 28. Look at that margin, completely gone. Again, if you have the right investment, you can try to sell. Otherwise, we are still at probably a slightly below average price though. And then we have the tungsten carbide that is currently selling around 250, a bit above average. And did just move up from 230, which I would put at around the average price. So especially if you can produce this type of stuff, it's an okay thing to sell your tungsten carbide. I think for investment opportunities, it's not the best time. I would look at crystalline carbonite if you do want to make an investment, but then again, have that patience for a buy order. On to the meta materials. Here are the photonic meta materials. Those are actually taking off and currently selling at more than 22.5k. Yeah, 25,000 is for the sellers, 22.3 for the buyers. You can see a margin opening up. Definitely a nice move up here. I'd call this a slight sell opportunity. Not as pronounced as the other two last year, but definitely moving the price to 25,000, which it would be above average. Next up, the plasmonic metamaterials actually reached a 1-year high point of 30,000 ISK. So last week you should have sold them, especially if you managed to buy them for less than 20,000 ISK. Currently on their way back down. That recovery is inevitable. 25,000 for the sellers, 23,000 for the buyers. A bit too early to make another investment, but it's pretty obvious that some dumping has been happening that is driving the price back down. Then we have the non-linear metamaterials are settling at an above average price here, currently selling for 32,600. If you look at that on the chart, it's going to be around here. not bad. If you have the right investment, you can sell. If you're producing, you can definitely sell. We are above average, but if you're looking for that investment, that's a no. And then we finally have the terahertz meta materials that are at around 25,000 ISK, flattening out here. Average price, not much to say. So this week here on the metamaterials, couple of sell opportunities. I'd still consider crystalline carbonate a potential buy opportunity, but most of the others are basically on their averages. For the other moon mining, advanced moon mining materials, we have the fermionic condensates that are moving between the 100 and 110,000 ISK, flattening out, also losing some volatility. So this may become a new normal. It is still above average for the year. The real question is, will we actually see increased supplies and then maybe a dive down of the price, or is this indeed the new normal range for the condensates? For the ferrogel, we are also staying flat around 55,000 ISK, above average for the year. Same question could be asked, is this the new normal situation? The fullerenes next, showing some volatility. Look at that, 1500 at the peaks and almost 1000 ISK, 1100 at the bottoms. Currently selling for 1300, buyers are at 1400, so back up in a pretty volatile swing. You have a slight sell opportunity at this point, definitely above average for the year. The hypersynaptics fibers, same picture here, above average for the year. Flat basically in the 15 to 16,000 ISK trade range. So you could sell, it's still above average for the year, but the question can again be asked, will this become the new normal trade range? Nanotransmitters, again a similar picture, you get some volatility here. The average, you could put that at 5,500. We are currently selling for 6,000 ISK, 5,350 for the buyers though, so I don't necessarily think that we're stuck with these price ranges on this one because of the margins. Didn't check the margin here. Yeah, no margin on the fiber, on the hypersynaptic fibers. Fullerenes also not too much. On the nanotransmitters, you do have a bit of a margin between these two, so above average, great to produce, but that question can be asked to us. Phenolic composites, 1 year high point, currently selling for 3,000 ISK. Buyers also almost at 3,000 ISK and well above average. Same story here, except that this has been a gradual increase over almost 6 months. And then we have the ceramic fibers, also above average. Bit of pressure at the tail end here, that could be interesting. But here sellers at 580, buyers at 555. Who knows? Who knows? I personally don't think that we are talking a new normal and that we won't see volatility from that. I do think that on more supply, less activity, maybe the war ends and things settle down there, that we will actually see a drop off and a buy opportunity. So yeah, the advanced moon materials, many of the others are above average and settling down. And also for the others, the carbides and the metamaterials, things have slowed down a little bit at this point. And I would say you have some sell opportunities, and only the crystalline carbonate would be my investment pick this week. Next up, we have the Tech 2 ships at 28.15. Like that. We'll go over these. I don't think we'll see too much because with the war happening. I think that there is basically strong enough demand to keep prices from doing anything too crazy. The Aries here, for instance, is just basically constantly staying just above 30 million ISK, 30.5 million for the sellers, 29.5 million for the buyers. No margin, not enough supply to really cause a massive drop or anything like that. And basically you can see from the volumes that there is above average demand, which is keeping the prices in check basically. The Cerberus still hovering at that above 300 million mark, so definitely above average. Get some volume spikes on that. It is a great ship. It's also used in nullsec, but it is still very expensive, so I'm not spotting any opportunities here for sharp drop-offs for real investments. The Claw last week did drop off quite a bit, but staying well above 30 million, still not enough in my book. And you can clearly see the recovery here as well, selling for 40 million ISK, buyers coming in at 31.1. Basically produce and sell, it's a great time to do so. You can also see that the availability, if we disregard the 50 million plus ones, is not that incredible, and so the increased demand from the war is basically keeping us at a premium. The Crow actually going up in price, dropped down to 30 million ISK. I was very hesitant, but I think last week, but you did definitely have, no, not last week, couple of weeks ago, but you definitely had a slight opportunity to buy some Crows for less than 30 million ISK. They're currently selling for 37 million, 32.5 for the buyers, and it's again not quite the availability that we would hope for if we're looking for lower prices for buy opportunities in the Tech 2 ships at the moment. So the Crow, sell opportunity, and just about a month ago or even less than that, you could have bought them for less than 30 million for sure. The Crusaders next, also spiked up to 35 million, going back down but staying well away from the 30 million price range. So 33 million for the sellers, better availability with 533 here, which is obviously what has caused that decrease in price. And then the buyers above 30 million, again, not where I would put my ISK in at the moment. The Heretic, same story, after going back up above 80 million ISK, on its way back down, but 84 still for the sellers, 73 for the buyers. It just, you know, this is also an interdictor, so the volumes are just not really trade worthy in my opinion. The Hound, the stealth bombers, those have been quite a bit more interesting, especially when we bounced down to less than 30 million ISK, up above 40, and back down here to 33 million, which I would have loved to see us go lower, and now back up to 40 million ISK, so and already back down again, 35 million for the first seller, 38 for most, 30 million for the buyers. So those buyers were staying constant above around 30 million ISK. I would love to see them go lower on one of these downtrends, but at the moment, yeah, even stealth bombers, right, it's a Tech 2 ship, but they're flown, they're used, they are one of the ships that can actually allow a smaller group to inflict, to punch way above their weight, and as a result we see this increased interest, and we see this activity at a price range that's higher than what I'm personally comfortable with. For investments, the Ishtar landing at 250 million ISK. I'd say that that's good news. 268 for the sellers, less than 250 for the buyers. The Ishtar is a great ship, especially if you're looking for an exploration ship or potentially an abyss ship as well. I think this could do really well. Easy to get, cap stable, active tank on that, great drone damage. You need a bit of work to keep them alive, of course, but I think that this ship will do very well as well. Something that I haven't done myself, but with the August 20th, I think, event in mind, I might say buying a couple of Ishtars and hoping that on the event some people will at least go for those could be a decent idea. The Manticore stealth bomber, as you can see here again, trading at around the 35 million mark, up a little bit, but not by too much. 37 for the sellers, 32.3 for the buyers. You get that those volume spikes, interest from the war in my opinion, and so that's another nope for investments. The Nemesis did drop to less than 30 million for a little bit, so that was a slight buy opportunity. Currently selling for 37 million ISK. Lack of availability is showing up again. And then the Pontifex here flat at the current range, but again, look at that, 88 million for the sellers, 77 for the buyers. Volumes are abysmal. That is not something. Oh, that reminds me, someone suggested that I maybe take the logistics cruisers instead of some of these command destroyers, for instance. That's a good idea. I haven't thought about doing that just yet, but logistics cruisers are actually flown a lot, probably see higher volumes, might be a good idea. So I'll see if I find the time to incorporate that somehow into the Tech 2 segment, because I do think that stealth bombers, you know, more volumes, often used, often lost, very interesting. Same thing with the logistics ships potentially, if it's not all capital logistics at the moment. Might be something I need to look into, maybe for next week. The Purifier, again, stealth bomber trading at around 35 million ISK, not enough volatility and definitely not a sharp enough drop off. The Raptor, same story, right, up to 35 million, way higher than I would like. The Saber, trading around 80 million ISK. It's a little bit better than stuff like the Pontifex on the trade volumes, but it's also showing that same pattern as the Interceptors, for instance, where we are continuously now trading above the lower ranges. Then we've got the Stiletto, a jump up to 35 million ISK, but look at that flat one here above 30. Yeah, definitely above 30 million ISK, which is this price range. I would need to see a massive drop off for an actual buy opportunity. Stork slowly back up from 75 million, and then finally the Taranis again trading above 30 million ISK. Not enough volatility, so it's very difficult in the Tech 2 market at the moment. I would say that the most interesting elements would be the stealth bombers. Some of these from time to time show buy opportunities and also show the spikes that you want for active trading. The others, well, with high demand in the war and not enough supplies coming to the trade hubs, it's very difficult to make ISK on those. Next up, we have the Tech 3 ships at 35.20. Like that. Let's take a look at the destroyers here. First, I have been testing all of these puppies out in exploration a little bit, you know, 4 out of 10s against the Sancha. Interesting situation, definitely not as effective as it could be, but most of them seem to be handling the sides, which I find very interesting if you want to add some challenge there. Here is the Confessor, basically currently, let's see, just above 35 million ISK and pretty flat there. 36 for the sellers with 129 coming in, 33 million for the buyers. Not a lot of margin, not the best buy opportunity, but definitely still trading pretty low, and I would say below average. I'm a bit surprised that we're not seeing more volatility in the Confessor and the Jackdaw at the moment, despite all the nullsec action. The Hecate next here, flat as well, despite this this volume spike 3 days ago. Currently selling for 38 million, buyers are at 34. You get another 207 here as well, which is keeping things in check and is a sign that you could potentially see much more supply than what we're seeing now. The Jackdaw did show a bit of volatility, went up to 50 million but dropped back very quickly to 38 million, tried another spike, but the pressure is still on. I think, yeah, exactly, 41.5 million for the sellers, 37 million. It's the most expensive one, it's also the best one, I would say. Missiles, you can't really beat that. You might already have been able to tell from my exploration experiments as well that the Jackdaw is just a cut above the other ones when it comes to usability, damage application, and range definitely as well. So that is why it is a bit more expensive. It's probably more popular in nullsec as well, but you can still see that despite that we still have 170 here, 77 here, quite a bit of availability. So potentially I think that wormhole space can outproduce what it's doing now and can easily outproduce demand as well. And then finally we've got the Zwepel that is currently going back down to less than 35 million ISK, 37.5 for the sellers, 34.5, and what is playing havoc here is that 240 and 140 sell order that is of course keeping the price from going anywhere, and as a result also another showcase that there are still hundreds of ships out there and that the production is basically smart enough to not keep crashing the price down, but they probably still have a lot of reserves as well. Next up on the cruiser front, we do see a bit more volatility. Here is the Legion that went up to 200 million ISK and is having to give back a little bit of ground there. 173 for the seller, 160 for the buyers, and here we see a couple hundred of them at around 175, again showing that there is still quite a bit of ships out there. The Loki slowly trending up, actually going up above 250. Availability, it doesn't look great, but look at that, 88, 390, 468, 176. So it's a couple of big players. Basically this Loki market I think is small enough that one or a couple of big players are grabbing all of them and putting them at the prices where they try to eke a profit out of that activity. The Proteus is just above 150, also up a little bit for the week, but look at that, 180, 180, 33, so lots of relisting. It is actually 78 days old, so it's basically an emptying of everything up until you hit those big numbers there. And then finally we have the Tengu that's also up from 150, currently selling for 175, but you can see 1,000 Tengus pretty much at 165 coming in. That is going to keep things in check a little bit. So that oversupply, I think it's still a danger. It's kind of strange what it's doing from time to time to the cruiser market. Most volatility, also in my opinion, the riskiest one and the most difficult one to actually get trades going in. I like what I still see in some of these destroyer markets, right? Pretty flat, pretty slow, but still decent supplies here. That those should be well below average prices, but when will the recovery be? That is always difficult to say. Last year though, we can clearly see that on the chart. Last week was August, September, spike up to 70 million ISK, and if you follow me since before then, you know that we had the same thing where we had well below average prices, very low prices, even down to 30 million ISK for the destroyers here for sustained periods of time. Lots of doubt, lots of will this ever recover, but then when it did happen, it was quite volatile and 100% profits were definitely possible on some of these ships. So this is still in my book, especially if you are willing to be patient enough for buy orders, something that you could invest in. I have some of these ready myself that I bought, like some of these confessors I still have. I definitely still have a couple of jackdaws as well that I bought on these less than 37.5 million on the chart. So this is still, in my opinion, the destroyers, something to look into as an investment as well for the medium term, I think. And then for the extra ships, I have some interest. It's a personal interest here. We're gonna check the Triglavian ships. So I wonder if how we can find them. Frigates, is it then precursor frigate? There we go. So here is the Damavik. Obviously this chart is not 1 year old yet because they don't exist for that long, but you can see that we started at 1.5 billion ISK and we're basically flat at the current trade range, selling for 173 million ISK, buyers at 151 for a frigate, quite expensive, but of course it is quite a unique thing as well to do. The interest is because I am at the moment training lots of these skills. I think I've got frigate 5, I think I've got small weapons 5, I'm currently working on the cruiser stuff. After that I'm still going to do the advanced weapon skill as well for the Tech 2 weapons, and then I'm definitely grabbing a cruiser and trying exploration and abyss with that one. Might even try the Damavik. I think it could be interesting to see what this little frigate can do as well, potentially, but yeah, that's what I'm training at the moment, so I'm also keeping an eye on the Triglavian ship markets, hoping for lower and more affordable price, of course. Still, 170 million basically for a Damavik, for a frigate, is quite expensive. Next up we have the Vedmak here that is selling for 390 million ISK. Buyers are coming in at 351. Same chart, of course. That will still need a little bit of time to update, and this is the price, so that is the volumes actually. Yeah, a little bit confusing maybe, but below a billion, now below 500 million as well, but still very expensive for a cruiser, an investment that you want to make. And then we have the battleship, the Leshak, perhaps for missions, that could be interesting as well. Still quite pricey though, 880 million for the sellers, 834 for the buyers, and of course a very similar chart as all of the other ones. So keep in mind there is bound to be an abyssal related event that is coming, that is going to provide potentially more skins for the Triglavians, and one of them looks absolutely amazing, so I do think I'm going to try to do that. And with all of those materials that I've been gathering, and someone was kind enough to give me some blueprint copies, I might actually be able to make my own cruiser and a frigate at some point as well. Might be interesting to take a look at that at some point as well. But yeah, the Triglavian ships are still very, very expensive for what they are. Basically, you have other ships like the Gila that are way less expensive, that can probably outperform the cruiser. And I'm not sure for the Leshak, but it is, I think, Tech 1 basically. So if we then would go for a rattlesnake, for instance, so this is 880, and then if you would, for instance, go for a rattlesnake, if you're looking to PvE, that's half the price, and that will probably be at least on par with what the Leshak can do. So still a bit expensive in my book, but I am training those skills, and at some point I'm definitely pulling the trigger on them as well. For now, that's it for this EVE Talk, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you all next time.